Thanks to people on Zoom for being patient as we gather. Okay. It's kind of nice to see everybody's faces though, right? So I'm going to leave it on just for a minute. Okay. Welcome everybody. Welcome friends on Zoom, friends in the Welker Room, to the chapbook launch event for English 595, which is the independent literary publishing class for the Chatham MFA program. I'm Sheila Squilanti. I'm the program director. I'm also the very lucky person who got to be the instructor for this course with these students. This is, to my mind, one of our most special, most exciting courses at Chatham. Let me tell you what you're about to experience. So we have a 15-week semester, like most universities, and the 8 students in this graduate level class each became a chapbook press in 15 weeks. What's a chapbook? Okay, I'll start there. Chapbook is a small volume of poetry or prose, typically started sort of with poetry, but smaller than a full-length novel or a full-length essay collection, a full-length volume of poetry. Often they are handmade, they are often artisanal, it's very DIY ethic. They are beautiful, and our students created 8 presses this semester. And when I say created, I mean that they each came up with a vision. They each came up with a name for their press, a mission statement for their press. They thought about the kinds of writers that they wanted to be able to publish. They developed a brand for themselves. They solicited an author. These are not books of their own writing. I want to make sure everybody understands that. This is not a self-publishing class. It's a different kind of thing. They published somebody else. They found another writer who they wanted to uplift, which is just wonderful. They solicited the author. They created a contract to publish the work. Then they went through the experience of editing the collection back and forth with their author to get the project just right. They did all of the marketing, all of the budgeting, every part of the design, production, sales, distribution, and fulfillment of the final book, all of which are for sale after this reading right back there. It is a ton of work. It's a ton of work over a year's time, 2 years' time, but they did it in 15 weeks. And I'm kind of astonished every time this happens. And truly publishers, oh, and I should also mention that some of them were doing this while they were doing their thesis for their MFA program and other classes as well. So it's really a heroic feat. And publishers, I would like to congratulate you right here at the start with a round of applause. So they've also spent the last 15 weeks creating a community with each other, offering feedback and tips every week in class. How do you design the cover? What's the best way to take payment? Help me with social media. How do you get printer bids and author blurbs and all the things? And most importantly, they've created community with the authors, some of whom I'm really happy to say are Chatham MFA alumni. Some of them, most of them, are here with us tonight, either in the room or on Zoom. And we're so excited to hear them read from their newly published books. Grateful that they've entrusted their work to these serious, creative students. So writers, we also want to give you a round of applause. Okay. We're soon going to hear from each publisher who will come up in turn to tell you a little bit about their press and then introduce their debut author who will read a short segment from their book. At the end of the reading portion, we will say goodbye, unfortunately, to the Zoom audience, but encourage all of you, if you're interested in purchasing these books, you can either find these folks on social media, or maybe you know how to contact them directly, or you can reach them through me. My email address is SQUILLANTE@chatham.edu, and I'll put it into the chat a little bit later, and I will send it on to them. If you're in the room, you get to go to the back of the room and buy a book, or 2 books maybe. You know, they're nice to give as gifts, right? Okay. One press, unfortunately, I want to acknowledge tonight, is not able to be here with us tonight because the publisher has contracted COVID. So Dark Mother Press, the publisher is Jenny Drone, and the writer is Chatham MFA alum Karen Cayazzo, are not able to participate tonight. But I would recommend strongly getting in touch and looking at that really wonderful book of essays. Finally, we all in this class would like to collectively thank Daisha Pross of the Chatham Copy Center for her incredible assistance with the physical production of these gorgeous books. Okay, I want to thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoy the event, and I'm going to invite our first publisher, Joe Emanuelson of TBR Pile Press.
Hello. I wrote everything down because I'm a little nervous. It's my first time opening a press. Good evening. My name is Joe Emanuelson, and I'm the founder of the TBR Pile, a literary press. I really struggled to come up with a name for my press. It had to be something meaningful to me while also giving potential readers and authors a sense of what I wanted to publish. I initially thought to incorporate my obsession with crochet, but Hookers Anonymous was already taken. Lately, TBR piles have been, or excuse me, to be read piles have been embraced as sources of pride rather than shame, which is something I'm quite pleased with. I think a lot of us learned thanks to the pandemic that we shouldn't be ashamed of the things that bring us joy. And we definitely shouldn't feel guilt for not loving something the right way. My press is all about the joy of reading without the tedious gatekeeping. To that end, I felt driven to publish books that I want on my TBR pile, which is why I asked Michelle Sinclair to be my first contributor. I met Michelle last November when I was asked to introduce her for a reading of her first book, Almost Visible. We hit it off over dinner, thanks Sheila. And when I needed an author, I didn't hesitate to send her a manuscript query. Unfortunately, I used my best joke at that event, so the rest of this is going to be very serious. Yeah. Michelle is a Chatham alum who has traveled the world, worked on human rights policies, and is currently working in an independent bookstore in Ontario, Canada. She has been published by Baraka Books, the Antigonus Review, the now closed Linden Avenue Literary Journal, and of course, Chatham. And she has been a delight to work with the last 15 weeks. Our collaboration on this chapbook has been a journey to find the heart of her story, and miraculously, I think we did it. Sadly, Michelle couldn't make it here tonight, so I will be reading a selection from her work. Just need to get into character first. All right. Say It Ain't So is a story about grief and guilt, friendship and parenthood, loneliness and generational trauma. And it's set in the 90s, which makes my millennial heart very happy. So, without further ado. Side A, Polly by Nirvana. Everything reminds me of Polly. No, that's not quite right. Let me explain. When I first met Polly, we used to hang out and walk around, feeling cool. It was the 90s, but she wore her dad's old aviators from the 70s, and they gave her an edgy look. With her big curly hair and tall frame, she was often mistaken for an adult. Now, I'm an adult, a mother, and my children and their constant needs take up the most space in my life. It is a never-ending list of chores. Socks to be picked up, soiled laundry to be washed, planning and shopping for weekly meals, permission forms to sign. I don't often have time to indulge in daydreams. What I should have said is that when I'm not being a mother, when I'm being myself, she pervades every moment of my waking life. One day, I'm in the store looking for sunglasses. Despite the sales clerk's best efforts to steer me to another part of the store, I buy myself a pair of aviator sunglasses. It's not logical. I don't need them. They look too large on my face. Decidedly not edgy. Unflattering even. Yet I don't want to take them off. When I turned 14, I had arrived at a new school in a new country with tender, tentative hopes. My parents were international civil servants addicted to change and reinvention. They moved me around until I learned to be as thin as a wind in spring. I became adept at molding myself to a place, shifting gears from the requisite displays of modesty to adapting and, if at all possible, fooling the locals. In time, this became a game. I caught on to cultural cues, learned the intricacies of language or intonation, and figured out how to imitate the most functional words, especially swear words. I suppose they're the same skills that most kids learn for self-preservation, to fit in and to hide. It's hard to figure out who you are if you're always adapting to a new environment. I was proud of my ability to blend in, but Polly stood out. The first day I attended orientation at my international school in Geneva, I saw her across the hall and felt the ancient tug of kinship. She looked out of place in the 18th century chateau-style building. She wore Doc Martens, a black shirt, black ripped jeans, and too much eyeliner on her bright eyes. She seemed familiar, though I was sure we had never met. I believed in serendipitous coincidences and thought deja vu was a daytime dream state that should be heeded for the wisdom it might impart. Maybe I was anticipating my memories. Polly seemed a little removed, a little above the rest of us, like she didn't quite belong to us. We both lived on the other side of the lake, and our trek home from school involved a tram ride, a 20-minute bus ride, and a 10-minute train. Those journeys helped forge our bond. We became friends immediately. We shared headphones and snacks, listened to our favorite music on my Walkman, and exchanged our impressions of people at school. We were swift to condemn those who conformed as boring, and we were cruel in our assessment of those who rebelled as being needy. For the most part, we saw eye to eye. I decided I loved grunge music and traded my floral vest for oversized plaid shirts and multicolored striped hoodies made of coarse, scratchy wool. My first cigarette was with Polly on the train platform. It was an overcast, rainy day. The damp, heavy air, the scorched chemical smell of cigarettes, and my resulting nausea were unbearable. She laughed and slapped me on the back when I coughed. Then she gave me a consoling hug. She taught me how to hold the cigarette casually to replace the nervous, purposeful way I gripped it before. It was all very titillating, like losing my innocence. I was learning how to fit in again. This time, the new country was adolescence. This is from chapter 8, Black Hole Sun, great song. Polly and I had both loved Italy, that thin, jagged country, like a torn paper where one scribbles a phone number for a prospective lover. We were on the cusp of turning 16, and though we were still on good terms then, it might have been the beginning of the end. We felt alive in the Mediterranean sun, which was harsher and more life-affirming than the comparatively gentle Geneva sun. We wore matching ankle bracelets and walked everywhere, arm in arm. Our dirty feet in tired sandals, our tan, dry legs propelled in unison. We talked about buying a moped, being bohemians, and living free. When I see her familiar handwriting now, the thin tendrils of letters like a vine cloying a pole, I feel a pull in my chest. She had just written one line. Isn't it ironic, don't you think? I never figured out what was ironic. Last bits. Chapter 13, what's my age again? Going through the memory boxes helped. I finally sleep, but I dream. In my dream, I'm back in Geneva with Polly. It is so realistic. When I wake, I'm relieved to be in my bed. I reach over to touch my husband. He is there, warm and snoring gently. He doesn't place much stock in dreams, but he sits up when I start to cry. I don't think he can understand any of it, but I tell him to imagine each moment of my dream like a strip out of a comic. There we are, young and fresh, arriving at her house. It is raining and dark. There we are, clumsy and giggling, preparing snacks in the kitchen. It is bright. There we are, hungry and messy, sitting on the couch watching a movie. The light from the TV illuminates our faces. In every moment, in every panel, I'm watching these young girls to protect them because I'm not the only one there. I sense another presence. I am watching someone else watch us. In the panel, he lurks subliminally in the background. It is an apparition of the shape of man. It is an apparition in the shape of a man. His face is a mask. His head is large and shiny, reflecting the kitchen lights. He lurks, watches, and plans. In the dream, or is it real life? Polly and I sit in front of the TV, our faces bland and neutral. Our expressions are like those cartoons in airplane safety manuals, where the flames are bright around us, but we look calm and collected, stoic.
Thanks, Joe. Next up is Amber Beck with Barmecide Press, and I'm going to pin her author so we will be able to see her. I think this will work, maybe. Come on up. No? Come on. Should work.
It should be fine. Once it starts talking, it'll adjust the speaker. Ooh, hello all. I am hi. I'm Amber Beck. I am writer, occasional poet, and now publisher. In starting my press, I chose the name Barmecide. You might be thinking, what the heck is Barmecide? It is a very old name, not very common at all, but it means illusionary, therefore disappointing. It's actually from an old Arabian Nights story. I won't get into it. We can talk about it at my table if you'd like. I'd love to talk about it. But in starting the press, I was thinking, what is illusionary, therefore disappointing? And I knew I had to look for an author who could represent that well. And and I mean that with all the love in the world. And so truly, what's more illusionary, therefore disappointing than girlhood? Truly. And so I knew just the author to contact. Luckily for me, she was a second year in the program. She is gone now, back in India. Curse you. But she is truly my soulmate, the love of my life, my best friend, and an amazing, amazing writer. And so we embarked on this journey to publish these Hands Are Destruction Hands together, a collection of persona poems, again, about girlhood. And you'll find that when you check us out and you buy our copy, there's like interesting page stuff going on. What's happening there? You've got to find out. And so I am going to read a short bio of Arista, engineer, and then I am going to turn the screen over to her, and she's going to read 3 poems from this chapbook. Arista Rawat, engineer, delves into questions that arise from the confluence of worlds, modernity and tradition, language and culture, myth and literature. This journey has whisked her from United World College in India to Lewis and Clark College on the US West Coast, and then back around the continent to Chatham University in Pittsburgh for an MFA in poetry. A Best of the Net nominee, her poems have appeared in the Roadrunner Review, Gingerbread House Lit Mag, India Poetry Magazine, an Airplane Poetry's Movement anthology, A Letter, a Poem, a Home, a collection of poems and essays. She writes, teaches, and waxes poetic in Pune, India. Give it up for Arista.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, excellent, wonderful. I don't know anything more illusionary and disappointing than the fact that teleportation is a myth. And I really, really wish I was there with all of you in person. And then back here 3 hours later for my job. So, but it is 4:30 a.m. and here is our first poem. Defiant girl takes Wall Street bull by the horns. Feet shoulder width apart, hands on hips, chin tilt up. I superpower pose in the face of a bull and stick out my tongue. I am dare. I double down, stare you to charge, knock me down. I am not statue, not marketing gimmick, will not comply with relocation, repression, regurgitation, not objectionable object. I do not care about your brief, your mission, vision, values, your diversity statement. I am belligerent when I dance, better than any of those damn matadors. I over-shoulder toss you into brick and steel and glass. Black hole rip your atoms to fuel the thrum and throb of my own raging heart. This next one is Choktar Catcall, which is the second persona that occupies space in these books. Okay. So just a heads up, like the title suggests, it is a sort of amalgamation of cat calls, so it can be a little difficult to sit through. Choktar Catcall. It floats in from bus stops. Hey, pretty. Dredges up from changing rooms. Smile, mirror. Listens, listens. Mirror on the wall. Piles on. What is point of view? Amasses in living rooms, whole of you. Seeps through bedroom walls. Dispace, space, space. Viscous, vindicative whispers. Better run. Race. perches on cold shoulders of friends, raise, crouches under the bed, under the bed, under the bed, you lie, misshapen, misshaped, slithers up to your chin. Love is for the beautiful, drains beauty out of you. Cheer up, and you believe. You know I'm true. You believe you. I fix you, affix you to the cold bed with gold, bangles, anklets, neck laces. Hey, pretty, pretty. Pins you, dead butterfly. You better fly by the time I'm done. This your test of fire. You eager, eager to pass. You fool, you nightingale, you dead already. You choke so good. And then I would like to leave you with a question that is also at the beginning of the book, which means you have to buy it to find out what happens next. Defiant begins in question. Some days, these hands act as destruction hands. They itch, they ache, taught only to create. But the urge to feel paper rip, plastic snap through my fingers slips through my fingers. These hands are destroyers' hands, and they love it. Hold a cup too tight, knuckle white, for otherwise I'd drop it. No, hurl it. No, open the window and badminton racket, smash it into the ice. These hands are destroyers' hands, and they tremble. Over-caffeinated shiver. Where did all this rage come from? Crack, shatter, spurn, what a racket. Pack it up and away, decorous and diet. This world, the creator's dream and preserver's care. What use then these destroyers' hands? Repressed and rejected fair. Thank you very much.
Oh, Arista, we missed you. That was wonderful. Okay, up next we have Maddie Jackson with Queen of Lions Press.
Hi, my name is Madison Jackson, and I'm a second-year student here in the MFA program. And my press, called Queen of Lions Press, if anyone knows me, it was a no-brainer what my press was going to be about. I'm very passionate about Jewish life around the world, and I wanted to be able to bring that passion to other people through the books that I publish in this press. And so Queen of Lions Press publishes nonfiction chapbooks about contemporary Jewish life around the world. We're committed to finding work that focuses on what it means to be Jewish in different places, not just in the past, but also in the present moment. The specific inspiration for the name of my press comes from the English translation of my Hebrew name, Malka Ariella, which means Queen of Lions. I was named after my paternal great-grandma, Nanny, whose Hebrew name was Malka. And although I never met her, I've heard many stories of her throughout my life, and I strive every day to live up to the woman that she was. And further, lions are a really big symbol within Judaism. They represent fierceness, strength, courage, but my favorite is they represent resilience. And within the Jewish world, Jewish people have time and again had to be resilient and bounce back from hard times. And this specifically can be seen through the vibrant Jewish communities that exist today around the world, often in places where people least expect them. And so to choose the lion, or a queen of lion, as the symbol for my press fit very well with this idea of publishing work that is about Jewish communities being resilient. The author for my inaugural chapbook for this press is a close friend of mine who I met for the first time in person this past summer in Europe. And we met first online and found out that we had so much in common because we are both passionate about sharing information about Jewish life around the world through writing, through words, through speaking, and through many different outlets. And so it's an honor that I could have her complete this project with me. And so when I first created the idea for this project, there was just no doubt in my mind that Lisa Semmel would be an excellent author. However, in February, as many of you know, an earthquake, a very, very dangerous earthquake hit Turkey. Specifically, it hit the town where my author was born. And so that made this project even more important and even more meaningful, that we get the word out to other people. And so in light of this, any proceeds that we make from the sales of this chapbook above the cost of productions, we will be donating to a Turkey earthquake relief fund. And so it is now my honor to introduce Lisa Semmel, author of At the Point of Joy and Sorrow, Essays about Jewish Life in Turkey. Lisa Semmel is originally from Antakya, Turkey, and currently lives in Heidelberg, Germany, where she is completing a master's degree in Jewish civilizations. She completed her undergraduate education in Italy in international relations. Lisa loves to explore new places, taste new flavors, learn new languages, and listen to new stories. Lisa writes for platforms such as Shalom Newspaper, Avla Ramoz, and Nena, where she talks about Jewish identity, global community activities, Jewish traditions, cuisine, and holiday rituals in Antakya. Please give a warm welcome to Lisa.
Thank you, Maddie, my dear friend. It is not as early as India or as late, but it's 1 here, and I wish I was there, but I'm happy that I'm joining nevertheless online. So I will be reading an excerpt from one of the 7 essays. What's left behind of the mosaic? It's February 6, 2023, 3:51 a.m. in Germany, 5:51 a.m. in Turkey. A message arrives from the Nana Group, an online platform which brings forgotten customs of Antakya and society to life. And at the same time, a post from the Times of Israel appears on my Instagram feed. While I am trying to comprehend what's happening, I receive a message from my cousin in Israel. My first instinct is to check on my loved ones and ask how they are. At that moment, I was worried not only for my closest family in Istanbul, but also for my relatives, neighbors, and friends in Antakya. I hadn't yet fully grasped the damage of the earthquake, and neither had Turkey or rest of the world. The stress and fear gave way to numbness and an inability to react. I was left dejected and heartbroken, thinking about the city where I was born. The kind people of Antakya were always ready to embrace each other and invite each other into their homes. The streets were jasmine-scented, and the city's unique recipes always included pomegranate molasses and sour and spicy flavors. Arsus is famous for its wind. The jasmine flavors that fell from the trees to the ground had been swallowed up by the cracks the earthquake caused. I struggled within myself about whether to write this piece. Bringing back what was lost would take time, and the questions swirling around in my head seemed endless. Who would have the energy to read an essay amidst all this pain? Did I have the energy to write it? Would the earthquake survivors who didn't even have a chance to take anything under the rubble read it? Or those who were rescued from under the rubble, who waited in the streets or their cars, frozen, starving, and thirsty? What about those who were miles away and trying every way possible to reach their loved ones? Would an essay benefit anyone? Despite everything, I convinced myself that sharing experiences, feelings, and thoughts is a part of the healing process. When I first wrote this piece, the earthquake destroyed the historical and cultural fabric of Hatay, a province in southern Turkey, and the Antakya synagogue remained generally intact, only losing its plaster. Although weeks later, with the effects of the aftershock earthquakes, Antakya's synagogue's internal structure partially suffered as well. Did the streets where my childhood passed and the times of joy and festivity give way to memories of ruins? Those who carried the Sefer Torahs, the handwritten copies of the 5 books of Moses, walked through the long, narrow, and difficult road that passed through Kurtuluş Avenue and Kemal Pasha Street. They stepped on the pain, unable to overcome it, but instead getting lost in it, while also holding tightly onto that history, that culture. The Sefer Torahs, which are at the center of Judaism, are very valuable from a religious and cultural perspective. To prevent the scrolls from being lost and or looted, they were delivered to a protected location. The necessity of removing the Sefer Torahs from the synagogue due to security reasons, such as an increase in looting incidents after the earthquake, dealt a blow to Antakya's cultural mosaic and Jewish community life. Antakya has hosted the Jewish community for 2,500 years, and this earthquake brought to its sad standstill. Yet, is it possible to have a rebirth from the ashes? There's a line in Shaharit, the morning prayer, that says, Hamihadash bekol yom betova mease bereshit. Within every good deed, every day, good deeds will begin. The phrase emphasizes the idea that every day is a new beginning and a chance to make the world a better place through our actions. From this, I understand that we can take something forgotten and create something new. The basic tension when trying to adapt to contemporary reality is between tradition and innovation. What we innovate is actually an old tradition, and we are not inventing anything new. The world continues to be recreated each day, and while adapting to reality, the ancient tradition of Antakya will also continue to live. Goodbye, childhood. Goodbye to a piece of my identity. Goodbye to my favorite flavors, jasmine, begonville, and honeysuckle. Goodbye to the windy arsus that the sunset leaves behind. Goodbye to the burning sensation in my hand when carrying the egg tray. Goodbye to the historical cafe, Afghan kahvesi. Goodbye to the delicious consistency of künefe. Goodbye to the fresh Antakya coffee and roasted chickpea smells that fill the entire street. Farewell to everything that makes Antakya, but only temporarily. Wherever I go, I will always find Antakya and the people of Antakya. When I return to the city, the desire to invite all the neighbors, friends, and acquaintances to a coffee, wave with a smile from the garden, and play football at Arsus Hotel will stay with me. I can only hope that Antakya will return to its roots as soon as possible, more joyful, more attentive to nature, and more resilient than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks, Maddie. Okay, next up we have Death Drive Press, publisher Halsey Heyer.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So just a little bit about me and Death Drive. I am a poet and hybrid writer, researcher. I do community work. Right now I'm on a bit of a hiatus, starting a press. But Death Drive Press is an anti-profit collective independent press based in the Rust Belt. And what I will say is, you know, this project was the project of the class was for it to just be me. Though I have been co-collaborating with a group of other trans and queer artists in Pittsburgh for, you know, I don't know, maybe the last like 5+ years. And we've done all sorts of different things together. So we are trying to give it a second go. We're a rebirth of a shared recurring dream amongst comrades and artists who have an affinity with the death drive. The death drive is said to be the tendency inherent in all organic things to return to an inorganic state. We specialize in editing and designing custom, limited run, handmade chapbooks in any medium or genre. Nothing is off the table for us, especially if it's weird. In addition, we're working toward establishing an artist interview feature on our website, the Megaphone Reading Series, which is an outdoor series featuring Pittsburgh-based writers reading their work through a megaphone in public. Goat Farm Poetry Society, which is a weekly reading and writing poetry group, and we are in the process of crowdfunding resources to create vending mazines, which would be to distribute radical literature throughout Pittsburgh. So if you want to buy a book or donate money so that we can buy old vending machines, come see me. It is my absolute privilege to introduce our very first publication of, the entire press. But this person is very, very important to me. I met them, God, who knows, several years ago in passing, because we are both collective members at the Big Idea Bookstore, which is a cooperative bookstore, also anti-profit, based in Bloomfield. It is about 20 years old. Lars Peterson is the actual oldest, not oldest, but longest standing collective member who is currently active at the bookstore. They are a writer, researcher, journalist, translator, historian, and activist. They earned their PhD in history with an emphasis on Latin America from the University of Pittsburgh in 2014. They received a Fulbright scholarship to Uruguay to study the origins of Uruguayan anarchism and the country's welfare state. At present, they are a board member for the Thomas Merton Center, and as I said, a fellow collective member of the Big Idea Bookstore, where they currently serve as the editor of the newspaper. Their chapbook is a beautiful, handcrafted, limited edition do-si-do chapbook in both Spanish and English. So we have it, this way, you turn it upside down, colors are inverted, and it is in Spanish. There are all sorts of goodies in here that I will leave you and to Lars to uncover together. Just a quick bit about the book itself. This book is a book written from the lived experience of a closeted Mormon on their mission in the 90s in Argentina. Sex Life of a Mormon Missionary, La Vida Sexual de un Misionero Mormón, explores the tensions between sugarcane workers and management, internalized religion and suppressed queerness, unparalleled sexual desire, and the heavenly loophole of auto-coming. And to be clear, I'm not talking about masturbation in the middle of the night on a crowded bus. Please help me welcome Lars Peterson.
While in Pocitos, the mission office conducts an emergency transfer of Elder Soto for his own safety. Rumor has it, our district leader, Elder Lorca, struck him in a homophobic fit. Soto is queer in all senses of the word. His shirts are always well pressed, adjusted, and of fine material. He showers often, his hair always elegant, slicked back. His speech, handshakes, gestures, and too dramatic a demeanor are feminine. A metrosexual from the capital city with a disdain for the poor aesthetics of his rural compatriots. His speech is crude, but he lands great quips. Of course, it's breathed that he's gay. One of Soto's former companions had this review. He never did or tried anything, but I watched him anyway. He's heard that Soto's trainer punched him for making a pass. He's weird, but he cooks like a woman. His mouth waters and he swallows hard at the thought. Once, Lorca tells me that they received a magazine in the mail by mistake and flipped through it innocent-like. The centerfold was of a beachside scene, a beautiful model in a bikini, busty, next to a man in swim trunks with a chiseled chest. Look at those pecs, Soto murmured in awe. Ay, faggot, look at the chick, Lorca exclaimed. I got a bad case of the flu. The doctor prescribes antibiotics via a shot to the ass. Soto is an adult convert and a bit older than most of us, having left a career in nursing to serve his mission. After buying the shot at the pharmacy, I could have gone to a clinic to get the injection, but Soto volunteers. Rivers aside, the zone leaders appear to make the following calculus. Soto is a nurse, has given tons of shots. He's a missionary, and this will spare Elder Peterson from having to expose his garments, that sacred Mormon underwear that everybody's so curious about, and bare backside to what will likely be a female nurse. Having Soto administer it will save the mission money. And so in an empty classroom of a church building, so bend over a table and drop my pants. As the needle penetrates my left cheek, Soto asks, "Isn't it ironic, Peterson, that I get to see your butt long before your fiancé?" I wince. My licentious past catches up to me 3 months in, hormonal and effective, present. I write, "Something odd happened since personal study this morning. I walked in the streets without the spirit, all the while wrestling with my past." The next day, the oppression persisted. It wasn't until night that I realized what it was. It was a sign from the Lord that I needed to stop being so hard on myself, that I again needed to forgive and forget my past. Since I got to the mission field, I've been very hard on myself, beating myself psychologically for every little thing. I was bound to break down sometime, and break down over and again I did. This was the first crisis of confidence, the initial swing of a pendulum, the start of a series of anguishing mental founderings where I doubt. I doubt my forgiveness. I doubt my basic goodness. I doubt my effectiveness as God's emissary. Doubt follows a predictable pattern. Something, anything, provokes my collapse. Mind stalls with the fear of the damned. Throat wells up with a persistent lump. Thoughts loop in a vicious cycle of guilt, of defense, of recrimination, of conviction, of reconviction. A whirlwind which lasts for hours or days or weeks or months, if vicious enough. I make some logical connection, stopper my wellspring of worry. Time passes. Soul raw from self-flagellation, I remind myself of my winning argument, reaffirm my redemption. I fear judgment. Per the injunction against discussing past transgressions, I suffer these internal conflicts alone, which only reinforces my isolation. I believe I am the sole missionary with a checkered moral past. My only confidant is my sainted mission president, who receives my self-doubts with tenderness and one of Jesus's more obscure sayings. When called to follow him, a disciple begs his master's pardon, saying he must first bury his father. Let the dead bury their dead, Elder Peterson, and come and follow me. My crises coincide with their apparent opposite, periods of time given over to concupiscence. 30 days in Psithurism, and I have a mental catalog of every pornographic poster within street sight. Most hang from mechanics shops, and provided particular windows are open, a few private residences. I give myself the barest of bare indulgence, a half-willing glance, incurring a stab of remorse. For Monday meetings with the zone, we catch a bus to Tartagal. On the way back, passengers snooze as the dark bus gives us a pleasant hum, swaying around the gentle curves on the road. My seat reclines, my companion next to me. I allow myself some moments of fantasy, moving through recent sources of inspiration, then daring to recall my teenage escapades from when we hid what we did, because if they knew what we did, then we'd be done. Moments to minutes to an hour with me lost in intense erotic projection, and in my mind his hand reaching to my belt, and I have a massive orgasm. My breach of composure drowned by the drone and darkness of the bus as we near our destination. A line of semen streams down my legs, sopped by the inside of my slacks. I'm elated, relieved with a minimal residue of guilt, because somehow, physically unaided, I have climaxed. I trade rest at least once a week to lie in bed and furtively imagine. I've perfected the demands of this exercise, intense concentration, about an hour's time, where I will myself to come. The mission atmosphere of sexual repression accentuates the effects of fantasy. Since Mormonism urges me to control bad thoughts without requiring ecclesiastical discipline for them, it appears that I have found a spiritually neutral loophole, a semi-sanctioned outlet. Thank God.
Thanks, Palsy. Thanks, Lars. Next, we have this press gets the award for I don't know, name that none of us had ever heard this word before, ever, but it sounds so good. Psithurism Press, publisher Alistair Blackwell.
Hello, I am Alistair Blackwell, and for this class, I decided to, of course, speaking of, because actually quite fitting because my press, what I decided to focus on what is called Psithurism Press. Now, a Psithurism is a word that comes from a Greek term called Psithuros, and it stands for like the sound of the rustling leaves in the wind. And it actually sounds quite nice. The whole term Psithurism Press, you can hear the sort of assonance of the S sound into it. And that's one of the reasons that I picked the term. The other reason is because initially in my press, I wanted to focus on the sort of people who accent the sounds in their work. However, I decided to do something. I decided to come with a double meaning because in this modern world, there's a lot of things that are grabbing for our attention that make a lot of noise, and it can so much noise like it can be like hurtful. It's overloading. A lot of us want to shut down and break down the silence, and it also extends to text as well. And so I decided to do authors whose work were often, not necessarily sometimes suppressed and sometimes just unheard in our modern climate of so much noise, so much attention, so much going on. We are texts that are struggling to be heard, and with Psithurism Press, I wanted to accent the voices who were often silenced or just straight up ignored in our contemporary society. And so for my press's first release, I decided to Alona Cardell Donaldson, who is a freelance public historian who focuses on African-American genealogy and history. Reading some of her blog post essays, I heard about people, especially Black people, I had never heard about before. And she writes some amazing work. And she also writes some in her book, Strength, Recollections of Resilience. She writes of her own family, as she writes poetry and prose of her own family, especially because when it comes to say Black history, a lot of us are just, it's very unknown. We don't hear it in mainstream, we don't hear it in schools. And when it comes to our own family history, there are a lot of stuff that we ourselves don't know. And even when we try to bring attention to it, we are still challenged to this day. So my author, as I said, Alona J. Cardell Donaldson, is a public historian and freelance writer specializing in African-American genealogy and history. Alona holds a BA from Carleton University in philosophy history with a concentration in pre-law, a master professional writing degree from Chatham University, and she's also expected to receive a Master of Arts in Public History from Duquesne University later this year. Her writing has been seen in the New Pittsburgh Courier, the Soul Pit Quarterly, in the Public Source. In 2019, her first published poem, Shots Fired, appeared in the Dreamers anthology, writing inspired by the lives of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Anne Frank. Bare Feet on a Dirt Path, or Where Little Girls Run Under Bare Feet, which was published in Chatham University's The Fourth World Journal in 2020. Cardell Donaldson explores the themes of African-American identity, family genealogy, culture, and placemaking in her work. She currently resides in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so here we will read from our wonderful author, Alona Cardell Donaldson.
So good evening, everyone. I am Alona Carter Donaldson, and the first poem from my book I'd like to read is called Strength. Just bear with me while I find the actual poem. I'm not seeing it in this copy. Okay. Apologies. So again, this is called Strength. I do not know where I got my strength. Maybe through hallelujah praises or choke cherry backs, or drums before the Sabbath day, or rice paddies and field hands, but it is unbeatable, unmeasurable, almost godlike. My strength is hot lie on bearskin knuckles. It is my grandma's bow-legged eagerness, my grand's hearty laugh, my mother's all-knowing eyes. It may have come from somewhere where I don't recall laying foot, or plantations where bare feet ran through thistles and mist snakes. A place where language was spoken in private. My strength is a vessel, passed down through dirt and uprising, tears and joy, a blossoming resilience under an oppressive sun. And I'm gonna read one more. This poem is called Lewis, and this is an ode to my third great grandfather, who was an enslaved person who bought his own land 6 years after he was freed. Hands clutched a brown piece of paper on a cool, wet day. Lewis may have scooped a little bit of dirt into his hand and saved it for the brick and mortar house that he would build. Using his hand like a shield, covering his bright face from the rain of the Virginia sky, holding tight to the paper because in his life, he had already been told too many lies. All men were not created equal. If they were, the Negroes would be called people. And his father, master, grandfather, master, and his uncle-in-law, master, would have never bought and sold him, the last of which did so in 1863, when good old Abe had already said all the slaves were free. Hands clutched a brown piece of paper on a cool, wet day. He apprenticed, enslaved, and worked and hustled from 1866 to 1872 to build house for Maria and his children, and shoveled the manure from horses and pigs, and endured the shit that masters did when they needed money, and the shit that happened when he was seen as money. In 1863, he was worth $1,400 along with Martha and Ann. Now he owned himself and some land. Hands clutched a brown piece of paper on a cool, wet day. The gall of a Black man realized in $40. Thank you.
Thank you, Alana. Thanks, Alistair. Our next press is Bloom Unique Press, publisher Jeneth Jebasing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janet. I'm a poet. I'm from India. I'm doing my master's and I'm in my second year. And with this Bloom Unique Press, I have published a book, Crossover. It was written by Sangamitra Nataraj. It's a collection of poems that speaks more about intergenerational trauma, intersectionality, and current life through her experience. So about my press, it is an independent small-scale publishing house that aims to bring out the unique narrative voices and life experiences of people. We are committed to highlight the voices of the marginalized, the suppressed, and the underrepresented who retaliate to make their survival to be in a brighter bloom. We value inclusivity in the world of diversity. As how a garden looks beautiful with varied flowers, Bloom Unique Press admires and appreciates the uniqueness that one finds in life amidst differences. Bloom Unique Press considers every literary genre, poetry, fiction, nonfiction, and digital media arts for publication. And about the author, she was my junior in college while I was doing my master's back in India. So when I contacted her about the class project, she was willingly accepting my offer. And she is currently an MFA student at the New Mexico State University. And unfortunately today she has a workshop class that she couldn't join us for the Zoom. She felt really bad for the timing, and she said she would be joining shortly, but then I'm not sure. So about the author, Sangamitra Nataraj is an Indian origin fantasy writer and a French teacher. She has an illimitable love of cats in spite of her landlord's disapproval. As a child, she loved making librarians sigh by reading above her age level and borrowing multiple books a day during her summer holidays. She loved reading fantasy series so much, she began writing one of her own. She calls it The Chronicles of Eltraha. Her friend and editor calls it a series of unfortunate errors that seem to make it through multiple rounds of edits. Or, when are you going to hand in your final manuscript, for short? The Unfavored Mage is the second book in the series. She is currently a GTA at NMSU, New Mexico State University, pursuing her MFA in creative writing, fiction, but this book is a collection of poems. About crossover, as the writer says, Crossover is a collection of poetry inspired by the work of Ada Limon and Eduardo Corral in a formal sense, but with an Indian twist. They bring together lived experience and the imaginary, the personal and the communal. The poems in this collection are multi-layered with texture that springs not only from the words they use, but also in the shape they take on the page. Dealing with the themes of pureness, intergenerational trauma, and the agonies and joys of living, this chapbook explores intersectionality on multiple levels. I would like to read 3 of her poems. If she is not there, can I just check it? Yeah, okay. So this poem is titled Baggage. I leave the bags unpacked, lest they convey a message of settling of home. This strange land, a home. Bag upon bag, preposterous. I carry, strapping them to my back, a skyscraper of regrets. I carry, strapping them to my back. Taxi drivers think this is my trousseau. A strange burden. They offer me pity and trunk space for a strange bride in exchange for a fee in a strange land. I set them down, but the heaviness remains in my hat box of a skull. I lick the handles. It tastes of tears, of salt, not yet rubbed into wounds. The man takes me where I want to go, a comforting deadweight, and watches me unload the bags, settling into place as if it never left, and it never did, stuffed into millstones of silences, sinking into the softness of forgiving skin, bags of resentment and regret, and I carry on, hefting my tower. This poem is titled Incisors and Incisions. I could relate so much to this poem because I could feel as a person who traveled from India to the US, so the change and the displacement, how it feels. So this is one of my favorite poems from this book. Incisors and Incisions. They were wrong for sending you away, he said. I grunted, unable to say anything, while he poked around in my mouth, drilling into the tooth that had been causing me pain for night on end. He asked me where I studied, and I innocently told him that and where my parents were. They were wrong, he repeated, to lose so much of their child's life, taking time away from each other, cutting into my soul with every word he said. What do you know? I wanted to scream. You're just a man in a lab coat, silently judging my life and my teeth without knowing the sum of it. When I was younger, I was afraid that I would be sent away to live elsewhere if I didn't behave. But when I was older, it was a choice, independence. Something I didn't know I craved till I had it in the palm of my hands. until it nearly slipped through my fingers. I was afraid to lose it then. And then years later, I was afraid again that my parents were going to die when I wasn't around to see them, to watch them as they grew older, adding years and gray tint to their hair like pennies in a piggy bank. But I know, even now, that I will always be angry with the old man who thought love could grow less with increasing distance, that hearts only grow cold and not fonder. Okay, this is the last poem that I'm going to read. This is titled Expansion. I have finally found someone who's just like myself, he said, and in the distance, a star burns itself out. I've been looking for the sun, but doesn't want to look at me, enshrouded in clouds of doubt under a graying sky. That night, he showed me the stars from the open parking lots, pinpricks of light, random humans assigned random names to it. Does Sirius know it is called like that? It was our star. Do stars know they belong to people? Do they know that a puny human out there, light years away, claims the light thrust out from the center? Violence begetting violence in the unstoppable fission and fusion in their cores. Humans have always been drawn to violence. Creatures that thrive on destruction, but no matter what happens, the universe churns. A star dies. Another is birthed at the center of all creation. There will be another boy at another parking lot who tells me the names of constellations while we freeze in the wintry evening air, and the universe will welcome the birth of another sun at the center of all creation. And I will start believing in love again and look at constellations from the parking lots. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny, for sharing those wonderful poems. Okay, our final press and reading of the night is Unmarked Pathway Press, publisher Lauren Hutton.
It's okay. It's okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren, and my press is called Unmarked Pathway Press. So I wanted to create a press that was specific to emerging authors, new authors that hadn't yet been published, hence the name Unmarked Pathway. The press itself looks to give a home to works of dreamy, intimate personhood. By championing the work of first-time and lesser-known authors emerging into the world of poetry, we take pride in giving our authors the space to create and share their work with the world. We look for works of poetry spanning topics of discovery, nature, trauma, femininity, and queerness. I'm so proud to present our very first author, Shannon Herman. Shannon is a graduate of Fordham University Rose Hill, where she studied journalism and English. Shannon has been published in Darling Magazine as well as Fordham University's Literary Magazine. She is a Texas native, but currently lives in Manhattan, New York. She spends most of her free time wandering around New York City, looking for new places to read. Her debut collection, Recency Bias, and this press's inaugural chapbook, is filled with themes of womanhood, yearning romance, and New York City landscape, and will take you on a coming-of-age journey of self-awareness and self-acceptance. I chose to publish Shannon's work because I felt a strong connection to her sense of intimacy and discovery in these poems, and I greatly cherish her choice of language. You can tell every word in Shannon's poetry has been deliberately chosen. So now I will introduce you to Shannon, who will read a few poems from Recency Bias.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Lauren, for all of your kind words. I'm going to be reading 4 poems from Recency Bias. The first one is titled, How Could I Ever Fall in Love with a Person? How could I ever fall in love with a person when I've seen the cherry blossoms in the spring and the ocean rage in the dead of winter? Seen the Parthenon in the moonlight and heard thousands of voices belt the same lyrics. The leaves fall and grow again. How, when I've seen New York City from the sky, even the color green? The next poem is called Recency Bias, and it gave us the name of the chapbook. So some call it recency bias. I thought it fate. It doesn't matter what you call it. Your name was suddenly on every inch of the earth. The third poem is called The Alternate Universe Where You and I Worked Out How I Wanted Us to. There's a certain intimacy in sharing this space. It's such a mundane thing, making breakfast in the same kitchen, but it's you and I, and it's my kitchen, only 40 square feet in my New York shoebox. A space so narrow the dishwasher doesn't even open all the way. With mumbled excuse me's and delicate touches, it's a ballet. We'll perfect it with time. Your whispered hum of Joni Mitchell, accompanied by the sizzle of the stove, even Kronos bows to our beauty, making minutes feel like hours. There is a certain intimacy in this moment that I know I'll return to, one we couldn't recreate if we tried. It will have to be enough to live in it now. And the final poem that I will be reading feels perfect for this time of year, as it's titled The First Hint of Spring in New York City. I wanted to write a poem about the first day that feels like spring in New York. It's not spring, and I know it will drop below freezing again this week, but this single day above 50 degrees is enough to carry me into April, and the cherry blossoms haven't even bloomed yet. It's a triumph that you can only feel if you've survived a harsh New York winter, cold, dark, dirty, and angry. I can't explain it to someone who hasn't been here, and the cherry blossoms haven't even bloomed yet. And now I'm flying down West Side Highway in an SUV with the windows down, shedding layers of puffers, scarves, and beanies as people bike and walk along the Hudson River. I feel lighter for the first time in 3 months, and the cherry blossoms haven't even bloomed yet. It's frustrating to describe, mostly because there aren't words to describe it. Move here and survive the winter, and then you'll know. And the cherry blossoms haven't even bloomed yet. Thank you.
What a perfect poem to end our reading tonight. Thank you to Shannon. Thank you, Lauren Hunter. Sorry, Lauren. Okay. To our Zoom audience, thank you so much for joining us. And you should be able to find my email address in the chat. If you need to reach the publishers to buy a chapbook, please do that. Can we, since we are all together in the virtual space and the real space, give all of the publishers and all of the writers a round of applause. Okay, with that, I'm going to say good night. We're all saying good night to you, Zoom. Thank you for coming. Thank you especially to the writers who are up in the middle of the night. Go to bed.